Hello and welcome back to another episode of Work in Progress. Today I am joined by special guest Hali Sanders to talk about her transition from a graduate to a professional. Hali graduated with her Bachelor of Arts in Communication and Media Studies from Old Dominion University in 2023, and then went on to graduate with her Master's of Education in Student Affairs from Clemson University in May 2025. She is now the Assistant Director of Career Development at the Center for Career and Professional Development. All right, well, thank you, Hali, so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Of course, yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Finally back on the pod. Happy, excited to be here.
All right, so can you tell me a little bit about what it was like going from being an undergraduate student to being a graduate student?
Yeah, I feel like mine was a little bit different because I lived at home most of college to save money, to, do the things at home. I worked in college. So this was my first time moving this far away. So if you've already accomplished that milestone, great. That's something you don't have to worry about. So that was kind of a whole extra layer of adjustment for me. I had also done a really good job, I feel like, at having a good foundation of such a good community where I went to undergrad at Old Dominion. And when I got here, I was like, okay, I'm starting at ground zero. Like, how am I going to go about that? And so I think my first kind of big thing was seeing what I could get involved in, kind of feeling out like who in my cohort would be like a good person to be friends with, to do different things with, and still also getting to like explore Clemson and explore the fact that like this is my first time like that far from home. Like if I really needed something, I couldn't just like drive half an hour and get my laundry done by my grandparents or have dinner at home or something like that.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a really big change.
How did you go about the job application process during your time as a second year?
Yeah, so I really tried to take time to be like intentional about what my life would look like outside of the jobs I was applying to too. So I was really big on like, especially when I got to Clemson, I was like, okay, this is the community. So I was like, I loved looking for, and you probably remember this when we were sitting next to each other. I loved being like, this is my dream job, but like, does it have like my workout studio I go to? And like, what is there to do on the weekends? And like looking for that. So I first kind of like was looking for things that I loved, and I was like, this job would be perfect, but like, where is it? So if it was in the middle of nowhere, I'd be like, okay, this job sounds great, but like, what would I do when I get off at 4:30?
Yeah.
And that's something that's really important to me is like, obviously I want to love my job, but I also want to love my life outside of it. And so I started to kind of narrow down what it was. I also looked into what cost of living and stuff was like, because I didn't want to kind of dig myself into a hole of going somewhere and loving it and having a blast and then being like, wait, I still have to like pay bills and pay off my loans and like do all these other things.
Yeah.
So I think just being really intentional with like the life outside of work thing before I went into the job.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I feel like I could love any job and love any position, but I was really like, what's the team I'm working with going to be like? What's the area like? What is there for young people to do? Like, how will I meet people and make friends? So I felt like I took that approach, and then I was like, okay, what about this job do I actually like? And then I would, cross them out, and then I kind of just started blind applying, and when people got back to me, they got back to me, and sometimes they never did, and I still have not heard back from some places, and I'm like, well, it's too late, I've got a job. And I think it was even more tricky. I feel like, yes, it's easier to apply when you work in the office already, but also a lot scarier, because like a lot of the times the staff would see me come in like on my very worst days too, like when I was coming into work like sick and tired and like maybe didn't have the best attitude. So I was like, that was in the back of my head a lot when I was going through interviews and stuff, and I was like, I hope they don't remember that day that I came in and I was like exhausted or like was slightly rude or something like that, and I didn't mean it, but I was just like, I was so out of it.
Yeah.
And so that part was really intimidating, but I think once I got through that kind of like mental wall of like, they saw that and still liked me, I was like, okay, sounds like they like me enough to give me a job.
Yeah.
And they did. So I think applying to places that you already are at in grad school, so if you end up staying at Clemson or going somewhere else, or if you're at an undergrad institution right now and you're going somewhere else, I think both are hard but in different ways.
Yeah. All right, so what was the transition like from being a graduate student to working full-time?
Yeah, so I feel like this definitely looks different on everyone too, but especially since I was already kind of ingrained in this community, that part was kind of the same, because obviously I'm still friends with a lot of people who are in my graduate program, but I also kind of try to be intentional about like people that I knew were full-time already and in the program, like our friend Lauren that works in the ASC, our friend Ashley who works for Campus Rec. I was like, oh, I should really reach out to those people, because they already kind of have been navigating that weird in between of being young and still being a part of that community, but also like making your own path, right? And then I also knew I was going to be like living on my own, and I adopted 2 cats, and so like that's taking up a lot of my time. And so I think just not having such a rigid schedule is also weird. Like when I'm done at 4:30, I go home and I'm like, there's no class, there's no homework. So that part's really weird. Like I even was jokingly like, maybe I'll just get another master's degree. I don't need to do that. I don't need to get another master's degree.
Not yet.
But I was like, it gives me something to do. And so I think you find like little, again, on that like personal life outside of work thing, you find like little things to do. Like I've been into crafting and like watching shows I haven't watched before, and I'm like, wow, I have so much, like I could read a book if I wanted to, and I haven't been able to do that like ever in my life because I've always been so busy. So it's definitely been really nice. But as someone who always lived on a really rigid schedule, between doing athletics in high school and then in college working and being a person, and in grad school working and being a person in classes, it's really weird to just have this much free time. Everyone tells you about it, but you're like, oh. And then also I still haven't felt like an adult yet. Like when I have like bills in my name and stuff, I'm like, do they have the right address? Like, is this me? Like, is that me paying that bill? And so sometimes that's just a little bit weird. And then especially when you're the youngest person in the room a lot of the time, when the grad assistants aren't there. Like I'm the youngest, like full-time staff, second youngest in the office, not the youngest. That's always just a bit like, oh, like I am the youngest person. So sometimes you don't want to say things because you don't feel like your opinion's going to be heard and valued. But luckily enough, I work on a team that is always like, no, that's so great. Like, I love that we have you on the team. Like, I think Charlene says at least 3 times a day how happy she is that I work here. And I'm like, sometimes you just need like one person in your corner to be like, you're doing great, sweetie. Like, you're doing phenomenal. And like, we're just so happy to have you here. And so I think seeking those people out when you're in this transition is really important for sure.
So for my last question, what advice do you have for students who are making the transition either from being an undergraduate student to a graduate student, or from being a graduate student to a professional?
Yeah, I think the big overarching thing of both of those things, and I feel like this sounds cliche, is just keeping an open mind. But also like closing that mind when you need to. Like not everyone is, I think, gonna be like as like I always am someone who just kind of goes into everything, and I've never really met a stranger. You're gonna meet so many different people, and like how different you are from being an 18-year-old to a 21-year-old. And then I feel like even the jump from being 21 to like 24 has been really drastic. Like even when I look back on my senior year of college, I'm like, that just feels like such a different time. And I mean, I'm still me. I'm still the same person. Like I love having fun. I love going out with my friends. I love going to dinner. Like I love doing all of those things still, but it's just in a very different way. And so I think from undergraduate to graduate school, obviously academics are there, but like the personal change of it all is crazy too. Because when you're in grad school and you're in that weird limbo of like student, but also like you're being held to the caliber of a full-time professional sometimes. I know especially in this office, like you guys are all held to a really high standard. And so I think, I mean, obviously that's a really good preparation for you all when you get into the real world, but just knowing that it's going to be very different from like being a undergrad when you can skip a class and the professor doesn't email you to check it on you, and they don't really care. In grad school, at least in our program, I feel like everyone really cared, and it was always really noticed when someone was missing. So I think just that adjustment of being like, oh, when someone's not in class, we're all like, oh, well, where are they? And especially in a cohort model, like you know everyone so well that you're like, wait, is someone sick? Like what's going on? And then from being a graduate student to a full-time professional, obviously staying in the same area is helpful because you kind of have that foundation for community, but also just like knowing that sometimes you're going to be bored. That's kind of my big thing is I come home and I'm like, I think I'm bored for the first time in like 10 years. Like I remember being little and being like, I'm bored all the time. And then I just got so busy. I never had the time to think about being bored, but I was like, I get home and I'm like, oh, I guess I'll like meal prep. I don't know, like you get into like different things, and sometimes it's like just funny because I feel like there's a whole like community of young adults out there that are like, oh, I really do sit in an office from 8 to 4:30 every day. And like that can be hard, but like you make friends at work, and then you also, if you have an office or a cubicle, decorate it really fun. I love my office. I've got a ton of crap in there. I feel like that's always really helpful because everyone that comes in is always like, oh, I just love it in here, and like that makes me feel good. I feel like it's a good reflection of myself. Obviously if you're working like a real corporate job, you might not be able to have like fun silly things like we do, but I love having fun silly things in my office. So I think just doing what you can to, like, I listen to podcasts a lot about like romanticizing my life. And so even in that like bored, like mundane, like I'm getting to like sit at home and like pet my cats and like, again, explore new shows and read new books I haven't gotten to do yet. Even though that's not like going out like downtown or doing anything crazy, like I'm still learning and I'm still like having a good time doing that. So finding enjoyment in like different things, I think in all I guess, chapters of your life.
Well, you just saw Haley's email, but thank you so much for being here today, Haley. I really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions about being a grad student, if you have any questions about the CCPD in general, please reach out to Haley. She would be happy to answer. But overall, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. Watch this episode, watch the next episode, watch all the episodes.
Yeah.
Bye.